So maybe you're like me and you've been playing the heck out of Fire Emblem Three Houses since it came out. Personally, I played through the Blue Lions now 2 times, the Black Eagles 1 time, and now oddly the Golden Deer. I don't really have much to say about the time I've invested in the game other than that too much would be apt. So, let's dive into what I think about the game, why you, right now, while listening to me, should be pulling up another window, typing in Fire Emblem Three Houses, and buying it if you don't already have it. Here we go. Fire Emblem is it's a great series. We're on like number 16 or something at this point. It is a great series that has been getting more and more popular here for the Western audience, myself included. The first one I played was on the Game Boy Advance, and I loved it. Young me fell in love with the series in that game, and I've played a few installations, but mostly on the consoles since then. So jumping back into the Switch, having it be portable and being able to play on my TV, it's been wonderful. Let's jump into what this Fire Emblem I think does better than pretty much all of the others. This is my favorite of the 4 that I played, so yes, I have not played a ton of them, but this is my favorite of the 4 that I played. First, we need to talk about that story. The story in this is so enthralling and gripping. Tuesday, I've got a Final Fantasy video coming out that talks about probably one of the only other games that's ever been this gripping to me, but I love how depending on which house you choose as Byleth, that's going to determine essentially who the hero of their story is. And we're all heroes of our own story, but who the hero of the story is. Because when I play through the Blue Lions and when I play through the Black Eagles, the stories are the same to a point, and then they are so divorced from each other perspective-wise that it is like playing an entirely different game after the time jump. And the same could be said about playing the Golden Deer, who, upon my first 3 playthroughs, or technically 2.5, because my Blue Lions I started back halfway through to keep someone from dying and get a happier ending. Yeah, the Golden Deers seemed to me to be the most interesting going into the game, and then when I got into the game, I fell in love with the characters of the Blue Lion house, Ingrid especially, she's my girl, and then I had to play them. It was great. The Golden Deer then became the least enthralling to me to play, because if you've hit the time jump in Blue Lions, you know, oh my god, that story with the Black Eagles. Whoo! So, Golden Deer became the least enthralling to play, but then when I went back and now I played through Golden Deer, I love this story. The story out of this game should be getting, from everyone across the board, a perfect score. There's no improvements, I think, that could be made to this story, and the fact that each of the 3 houses have a different, like, A and B path. Wow! So much here. I love it. But you're not necessarily just here to hear about the story of Fire Emblem. Fire Emblem is a strategic role-playing game. What's the combat like? Well, the combat's not going to shock you. The Fire Emblem Three Houses combat is a Fire Emblem game. So the same strategy, grid-based movement, and attacking that you're used to is present here. But this does something really interesting with combat. Yes, you still have the supports and the characters that have relationships with each other built outside of combat still affect inside of combat, and that's great. But this combat is benefited from a revamped, refreshed kind of class advancement system that feels very Final Fantasy Tactics-esque in equipping skills from classes you've mastered. So once I master the Cavalier class and I move on, I could move on to a non-mounted class, but the skill that I got from mastering that class, I can bring with me, and whew, that adds a whole nother level to this. Putting in some sort of, what classes do I need to master, and what classes can I just use to train this weapon or this skill to get to that class. I love that. And that adds a little bit to the battle system, because you're not always going to have everyone in the ideal class. Sometimes you're going to have them in stepping stone classes, and that creates a lot of, I think, interesting tension. So, aside from the interesting tension, though, this adds a battalion and gambit system that is like a secondary equipment system while at the same time gives each character a unique ability in battle. And what I liked about this is that it let you, depending on the movement type, it let you put, say, a Cavalier character with these priests as their gambit. And so now your Cavalier has a mobile heal feel to it. Whereas this Cavalier unit might have, I don't know, something to push or swap places with people as their gambit, as well as attack, because the battalions that you're using are effectively troops in your army. This is army versus army. And I know a lot of people are going to say, okay, the top-down view looks the exact same in combat. Try zooming in. Because when you zoom in, it's a whole different perspective. You see their adjunct units and their battalions, and it looks awesome. The next section we need to talk about is the monastery. The monastery plays a big part in this game, and not only developing the relationships that you have amongst the characters in your class or post 5-year jump in your unit, your army, but it also plays a big part in developing Byleth skills, because here you can take lessons from other teachers. After the 5-year jump, you can do advanced drills. This allows you to really train Byleth using your time there after you've kind of built the relationships that you need to. You can also sit down and share a meal with someone, take people to tea to develop those relationships. And you can do these free things like planting crops, which everyone should be doing all the time. It's the best. And don't skimp out on it. And also fishing, which I'm not a huge fan of. And we'll get to that when we jump to the cons at the end of the video. Stay for that. But I think the monastery, I thought it was going to be boring. Boring as all hell. Ooh, walk around the monastery, talk to everyone. Yes, and it turned out to actually be tied with the story. I loved it. I love developing the relationships with everyone at the beginning of the game. I love developing the relationships later on in the game. Ooh, the monastery is perfect. I love it. And you can do as much or as little as you want, because you then also go into instructing, and instructing you can set automatic. So if you're on, say, your 3.5 playthrough, set that to auto. Just run right through it. Okay, so I have been raving about this game, and I've played I would say every piece of this game I have any desire to play at this point. Let's get into some negatives. Okay, so first off, this is Fire Emblem. So you already know a lot of the negatives. The battle system is not going to feel, yes, the gambits are cool, and the battalions are cool, and the new classes, and the altered classes, and the refresh. All of that is great. But if you're not a fan of strategy role-playing games, this is not going to be a game that you pick up and you're like, oh, I love the battle system. It's still the same system. So if you see that as a con, you see it as a con. There's nothing I can do about that. See that? I'm struggling to come up with cons. Okay, but the con that really comes to mind for me is the slow start. And I do mean slow start. Yes, I liked it, but I can definitely see how it's a detriment to this game and the franchise that until about 2 hours into it, you're just goofing off talking to people. But that's all for the better. Another con that I see is that I have actually seen and heard from people turned off that the game has so much replay value in playing through the stories and playing through the stories possibly 2 times. I'm not sure why you would perceive that as a con, but if you're someone that hates playing good games a lot, then yes, that's a con. Big con for me is fishing. Fishing is such a powerful tool in this game, because if you're fishing, first off, once you unlock merchants, buy all the baits you can. But when you're fishing, you're not only getting rare fish to sell, but you're getting professor experience. And so if you're maximizing your fishing early game, you're going to have an insane amount of professoring time in the beginning of the game. Like, an insane amount. You will be sharing meals with everyone until they're capped out. Relationships are full. You will be doing drills. It's bonkers. Another negative is the growth. I've always hated the growth in the Fire Emblem systems. You get into this, when I level, I get these random stats. I've never been a fan of that, because then sitting down and talking to Ben, I see, okay, I love this character. I love that character too. My character is like flat out maxed on this stat, and he's like, yeah, they never gain that for me. And that is such an antiquated old system. Just drop it. The next con that I'm actually going to get to, speaking of antiquated systems, is the durability system. The durability system in this game makes spellcasters even more powerful than they were before, because now spells are more like, I would say, Dungeons and Dragons early editions, where you can do it a couple of times this battle, and then in between battles the spell refreshes. And I really dislike the durability system. I understand why it's here, in that, okay, so this weapon has 30 durability. To use this special art in combat, it's going to take 5 durability instead of the normal 1 or 2 that I would use to use the ability. So it's almost like having the MP of a character on the weapons, but then you pay money to refresh the weapons. So really, your spells could just cost money and cut out the middleman. It just seems like a weird system to me. And the final con I'll get to is actually Byleth, the main character. I've never had a Fire Emblem game that I've been attached to every character in my team like I was my first playthrough of the Blue Lions, except for Byleth. I was more attached to random Catherine than I was Byleth or Shamir. I was more attached to them than I was the character I'm supposed to be playing. That's weird to me. And I feel like the game could have done a better job. I don't care that he's a silent protagonist, because we've had silent protagonists like Chrono from Chrono Trigger, who I am very attached to and very much in love with. But I did not feel the same about Byleth here. And half the time, I felt divorced from the character. And I didn't like that. You could have just then let me play through as Dimitri, or as Edelgard, or Edelgard, or as Claude, and I would have been fine. So take it or leave it. Negative. Could be a positive for you if you're a huge fan of silent protagonists. Let's get to my conclusion, though. Fire Emblem Three Houses. This is a game that I think, it's not a system seller like Breath of the Wild apparently is going to be forever, or Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. But I think if you're a fan of role-playing games, and even if you're, I don't want to say if you hate, but if you're lukewarm on strategic role-playing games, I think you still got to give this a shot, because the story is that good. And the fully voiced dialogue sections are that good. There is so much good in this game that any cons I could give you about fishing, or about the main protagonist not being as, I guess, interesting as he could be, any of the negatives that I could give you, or that you're going to see in the comments, or that you're going to see in other reviews, I think are crazy. Because while they're negatives, they're so minor. If this game isn't getting a 9 out of 10 for you, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what you're doing. So, if you haven't gotten Fire Emblem Three Houses, I encourage you, like I said, to have that other tab up and get this game. And if you already have Fire Emblem Three Houses, what cons did you see? Were you as in love with the story as I was? Or were you as attached to the characters as I was? Except for Hubert. That dude is weird, creepy, and I don't like him. But yes, please leave any of that stuff in the comments section below. If you guys liked the video, hit that like button, or if you disliked it, maybe you hate Fire Emblem, I don't know. Dislike the video, and please guys, please give us a subscribe, help us grow this channel, and let's talk some Fire Emblem Three Houses. I'm out. There's new games to play.